Welcome to the unofficial Tedeschi Trucks podcast. I am Adam Choit. To follow this show, it's at Tedeschi Trucks Podcast on Instagram, and on YouTube, just search Tedeschi Trucks Podcast. Pretty easy to find. Please be sure to subscribe. I appreciate that. I'm at Adam Choit on Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me. And of course, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. Thank you for that as well. Positive reviews on Apple Podcasts are definitely appreciated too. TedeschiTrucksPodcast.com also forwards to my link tree, and you can find all the relevant links for this show there. AdamChoit.com for all my personal stuff. So for today's episode, we have hardcore Tedeschi Trucks Band fan, Zac Transport. Also a musician himself and a DJ at WBRS at Brandeis University. He's quite the dedicated TTB fan. Some fans have been around long enough to watch Derek Trucks grow up, but as a young man, Zac himself has grown up with the band, largely because of his dad, who was also a great music fan. Zac recalls dad taking him to the Beacon to see the Allmans and TTB and to other shows as well. Zac has some great TTB stories and anecdotes with members of the band. So let's just get started. Here's Zac Transport. Okay, so it's good to see you today, Zac Transport. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Adam. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, for sure. How are you holding up during whatever year this is?
It's a good 2023 so far. You know, things are looking good. I've got my plans to go to the garden parties in Boston, Massachusetts. So that'll be exciting. That's my September. I was thinking about, maybe possibly going to SPAC too. I've got some friends who want to convince me to go to Red Rocks. If I can grab a ticket, that'll be fun. Yeah, things are good. I just also got off the December, vibe from when we were at the Orpheum. So I was there for the December 2nd, December 3rd show, and that was real fun. So, yeah.
Very cool. Those were the final two shows of the year for TTB?
They were. Yep, they were.
Nice.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we'll get into those. Where are you located right now?
So I am currently located in Natick, Massachusetts, but I was born and raised in Great Neck, which is in Long Island. So I'm a city kid, just out of the city. And my dad and I used to go to the Beacon a lot. So that was my home base for a really long time. But now being in Boston, I've got Susan's neck of the woods out here. So I've got to try to find my roots and figure out where the home bases are.
Nice. I thought it was Natick. I actually saw a video someone posted on Twitter. It was some people not from Massachusetts trying to pronounce all these towns in Massachusetts, and they're all impossible. Long Island has a lot of those too that are hard to pronounce.
Yeah, absolutely.
Names people have no idea how to pronounce.
Massapequa.
Yeah, nobody knows how to pronounce it.
Exactly.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about your background? You mentioned you growing up in Long Island, and you got into a little bit about your dad going to the Beacon. Tell me about kind of your earliest musical memories and your family background, siblings, parents, and.
Sure. I mean, so it's just me. It's me and my sister, and we're about 18 months apart. But so I'm the oldest of the two of us. And my dad was just playing music all around the house all the time. And like Susan's family, very much, we were a Dylan house, a Bob Dylan house. So we have posters, CDs, books, everywhere in the house. Basically, anywhere you turn, there's nothing but music. So, I mean, I was raised on let's see. So, there was a phase where, he introduced some Buddy Holly. Chuck Berry was a real big one too. And the Buddy Holly, the Winterland stuff, Big Bopper, Richie, Richie Valens, all that. And we had the band going. And I remember actually my youngest core memories when I was a kid, and we had Orange Blossom Special playing on the stereo system in our house. And I was running around the table because I was thinking it was a choo-choo train, just running around. So, I mean, we've had music going all the time. And so earliest memory of mine would actually be going to a Bob Dylan concert with my dad, where he had me on his shoulders in the front row, and I was basically a baby. And it was just, basically right from the start, music was always in the house, always on the radio. My sister and I would take, car trips. My dad would have a CD in, whatever he was listening to, we were listening to, and he would take us through this musical journey. We had the Beatles One album on our car for a while, and that would be our you know, little trip. We would remember the songs right after one, right after the other. We would start singing the next one, be waiting for it. And sometimes when I hear Beatles songs now, like I'll be waiting, like, oh, like what's the next one? Because I'm like, you know, like responding to what it would be on the One album. And then basically it was in 2009, I would say, that my dad took me to my first, like, to the Dead stuff, the Dead, when they were in 2009, but it was 2006 when we went to go see Phil Lesh and Friends, and that was when I met Phil Lesh, and I actually have a photo of that over here, if you want to pull that up. So this is something that I was at a show on February 11th with my dad, and we had a connection to Larry Campbell at the time, and still do, through his mother Maggie, because my dad drove Maggie and his wife and Larry's wife Teresa to a couple concerts, you know, because they had become friends at some Bob Dylan shows and things like that. And so Maggie, you know, took me as a very young kid. I was born in 1996, so I was maybe, you know, 10 at the time. 10 at the time, and took me to the backstage area to see Phil Lesh, and this was at the Beacon. And we, you know, we went up. We went through, like, if anybody knows the back of the Beacon, there's all these, like, you know, metal gates and stuff through the elevators. It's like a really old gate elevator. So we get in through the elevator, and all of a sudden the gates open up, and there's, anybody knows, Larry Campbell is really tall. He looks like a pirate. He's got this beard, and he's standing over us, and it's great. We walk out, and I walk into Joan Osborne's dressing room, and it's one of the most amazing stories because she has 2 iPods, one for Grateful Dead music and one for all of her other stuff. And so she was telling me all these things, and I come out and I tell my dad this, and then the guy behind us is like, oh my God, what I wouldn't do to be in Joan Osborne's dressing room. Meanwhile, I'm a kid. I'm like, oh, I was just talking about music. Okay. Like, you know, it was one of the most crazy experiences. But at that time, Phil gave me those armbands, which he told me that he was wearing as a memory of Cody, who gave him, you know, the ability to continue living with his transplant. And it was a really nice story. And then he wrote me this letter and so it says here, it was, let's see if we can get it. It was a pleasure to meet you at the Beacon. I hope you're rocking out every day. That's the way to do it right. Maybe we'll meet again or even play together someday. Your friend, Phil Lesh. And that was just like crazy because he took the time. He remembered that we'd met. He took the time to write a handwritten letter, and he signed it and sent it in the mail with the armbands and 2 picks as well. So there was a bass pick there that's framed there. And so that was the pass that I wore when we were going back there, and Maggie took me back there. And these were our tickets when actual physical tickets were printed. It was so nice to have that. But so you can see, so that was from the Beacon Theater. And that was my like one of the first core really experiences that I remember having at the Beacon, was meeting Phil. And so that kind of, like, you know, took me on this musical journey of the Dead. And then I remember in 2009, we saw Warren Haynes and further, and that was at MSG. And we also saw the Dead in 2009 at Nassau Coliseum. And so and it was fine because we had binoculars, and I remember, like, sitting up all the way up and enjoying myself so much because I could feel the vibrations in the seats, and I could feel, like, the crowd, like, just, you know, the entire room was energetic, and there was, like, you know, yeah, sure, there were screens, and sure, they looked like little ants and stuff, but I had my binoculars. I was a kid. I was rocking out. It was the best time of my life. And so then I remember my dad in 2011 taking me to the Allman Brothers Band because I liked seeing Warren so much when I was, you know, seeing the Dead. And so this was now 2011. So let me get to that here. Oh my gosh. Let me pause a minute.
That's
Sorry.
really nice of Phil to write that note to you. That wasn't like, hey, Zach, keep playing Phil Lesh. He wrote a couple of paragraphs. So that's, like, really nice. And for some reason, I could picture you as, like, a 9, 10, 11-year-old kid kind of like talking in a similar way with a similar amount of enthusiasm for music. And I bet all these musicians and all these people around you, your dad and like other like musicians, obviously, like can see your passion right away. It wasn't just Phil like, oh, I'm gonna write something to this kid because he's nice. It's like, this is a nice kid, but this kid is like crazy about music and probably talks about it. I'm guessing in a similar way that you are right now, in almost like an adult way. I can guess, just your dad, for lack of a better term, probably brainwashed you or did brainwash you very, very young.
Yeah. I mean, what I'll say is this too, is that my dad was actually very interesting in that he stayed back. So he stayed out in the venue and just kind of let Maggie take me and just kind of explore the beacon. And he did that a lot. So whenever I have these meetup stories that I'll tell you about, he has kind of always just like hung back and let me have those experiences, and then, would also just be experiencing that vicariously through me and like being able to see my excitement in that. And I think that was more of the way that he wanted to experience those things too, which was kind of nice, because it was just like a kid exploring. It wasn't like a kid and their parent like, oh, like, let me like hover over, like I remember one time we were, at this motel for this Dylan concert that my dad took me to. Again, my sister and I were very, very young. Charlie Sexton was in the band at the time. And it just so happened that the motel we were staying at was the same motel that Dylan and his band were staying at as well. And so my dad and I and my sister and my mom were out by the pool, and Charlie Sexton was out there swimming. And we get on this like floaty rafty thing, and he calls us like, oh, surfer dude, right? And so we're at the venue again, and like we get there kind of early, and I see Charlie on the stage, and my dad says, oh, that's Charlie, that's the guy from the pool. I said, surfer dude. He was like, oh, surfer dude, because he remembered. And what was interesting is that Dylan was standing outside the motel, like with his couple people, like, and we were very far away, like underneath some tree, like, but out by the motel. And my dad said, that's Bob Dylan. Do you know who that is? That's Bob Dylan. And we were like, oh, wow. And he was like, okay, be very cool. So, we look out, and Dad now tells me much later that, Dylan was like looking over or whatever or something. And Charlie Sexton goes over and says, no, man, it's cool. They're cool, because he remembered us from the pool. And so then, my dad says, okay, you can walk over. So me and my sister walk over to Bob Dylan, like as young kids, and we say, hi, Mr. Dylan. He says, how you doing? He puts out his limp hand like this and shakes my hand like a fish, but it's like a dead fish. It's great. But he goes, how you doing? I said, well, I'm great. We're going to the show. Oh, okay, great. Well, thank you very much. and then we go back over to my dad, and we were like, yeah, it was great. Crazy. But like, again, my dad stayed back, and remember, he's the big Bob Dylan fan, and he wanted us to have that experience and see us be so excited through that. And then now I have that memory with me forever, and it's something that I'm going to be able to tell here and with other people who appreciate music. And just, it's like, it wasn't about like, oh, can you sign this? Can you do this? It was like a genuine like moment of like excitement and curiosity of like, oh, I'd heard this person on my dad's CDs all the time. Like, this is this person. Okay. And it was just like a very, innocent moment. And it was very like, it was a really sweet moment as well.
That's really cool. Had your dad met Bob Dylan before? Or had he had interaction with him before up to that point? Not that it matters.
I think basically from what I know, it's like he very much, wanted to just stay back. From what I know.
That's cool. Your dad seems like a super cool guy, and I'm guessing obviously also a big TTB, Derek, and or Susan fan.
Yeah,
I might have to get him on this podcast. I'd like. Who I'd like to get is Bob Dylan on here. That would be cool. Not even so much to talk about all of his career, because he's been actually he doesn't do a lot of interviews, but he's definitely been written about and talked about and endlessly, and there's tons of stuff out there on him. But to get him on here to talk about Susan and Derek, because I know he's done with Susan, and he's a big fan of what they do, and they've done his songs, of course, over the years.
I saw your episode on that. I saw you did an episode about Dylan and the connection with Susan.
Yeah, when TTV wasn't touring during lockdowns and all that, I'm like, how am I going to come up with content? I'm like, just talk about the Bob Dylan stuff. That would be cool, because you know Alan Pauly's been on the
yes, and actually, Alan, his daughter right now goes to Skidmore, which is where I went to college from 2014 to 2019. I just found that out the other day. Crazy connection. And it's and that's where also Paul Simon's daughter went, was at the same time as me. And Ricky Blacksburg, whose dad is Jay Blacksburg, the great famous photographer for the Grateful Dead and many other famous bands.
All these connections.
Skidmore. Yeah.
Very cool.
Crazy.
Yes. So what I was going to say is Alan Paul, he obviously he does a lot of high profile journalism and high profile work and writing and all that. And he was trying to get a hold of Bruce Springsteen, but not to talk about Bruce and his work, but he wanted to get him on to talk about Dion, because Dion was coming out with an album. I think it was like a compilation of, I think it was covers with guests or something like that. And so he wanted to talk to Bruce about Dion. And a lot of these artists are probably sick of answering the same stupid question. Tell me about Born to Run. What was it like? And whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But to get on and talk about other artists, I think that it can be potentially exciting to other. I mean, Derek, too. Like, you hear Derek and Susan, how much of their interviews is just talking about, their influences come up all the time. So you can see the passion in these musicians when you ask them about other musicians. So that's something I may keep in mind moving forward, rather than just being like, come on the podcast, Bob Dylan, talk about whatever, but maybe talk about Susan, because that would be something a little bit outside the box. What were you going to say? I don't even need to do anything on this podcast. You just tell me your stories and share them.
Well, no, I mean,
listen.
Well, so you talk about this, about talking artists, about their influence, and I had that exact question, and I had an opportunity to ask so it was outside of this other context. This was. So if anybody's in the Facebook group, I made a nice long post about meeting Derek and Susan at a sushi restaurant, and I can get to that later in the podcast because this one's more relevant right now. So I didn't really have much of an opportunity to ask them anything about, music, influence, or things like that, because it was just a very quick meet and greet. So it was at SPAC, at Saratoga Performing Arts Center, which was at Skidmore, like right down the road, basically. And Saratoga Springs, that's one of the large concert venues there. So I was there during the summertime, and I think, so I have this written down where I was talking to Derek so it was the 2017 show, July 3rd. And I had been taken back by Mark Rivers, who I'd gotten very friendly with over the many years of following the group and growing up with the group as a kid and growing into adulthood. And so by the time I was in college, I had started taking up sitar lessons in addition to mandolin lessons and many other musical explorations that I had been doing. But I'd been playing guitar since I was a kid, as I was 6. So I was very musically inclined, and I'd been given this opportunity to meet Derek back after the show at SPAC. And I asked him the one piece of musical advice that I thought would be and I had thought about this for a very long time. What would be the one question?
How old were you at this time, did you say?
At this time, so 2017. So this would be, like during my college years, maybe like about 2 years before I graduated.
Yeah, you're 21, born in 96. I got you.
Yeah. So, I've been thinking about this question for a long time, is what do I ask him musical advice wise? Because I don't want to come out exactly and be like, oh, like, what was it like to record like this? Or like, what were you thinking about? Like, no, it's like, what can you help me to do, which is what I know you've done hundreds of times, asking other musicians, what should I listen to? And so I said, so I play sitar, I've been doing this, like, what are the things that I should listen to? And he said, okay, I have 2 recommendations for you. Number 1, I think you should look into a book and CD compilation called The Raga Guide. The Raga Guide is a huge compilation of basically 2 to 3 minute recordings, about 50 or 70, 75 tracks of all of the different ragas, which are basically, note modes that carry through, an Indian classical music piece. So you could have, a set of 7 or 8 notes that go throughout a scale and that you'll hear repeated. And those will be the ones that you play in a certain order with a certain, rhythmic beat, and that will be considered a raga. And any arrangement of notes with a certain amount of beats per session there is a raga, right? So you have this book that's a huge compilation of all these different ones. And the reason he told me this is because he uses it to get inspiration for solos when he uses his slide, because sitar is very much, while it has a lot of strings on it, it's very much linear instrument. So you go all the way up and down on a singular string. which is very, analogous to playing slide on a guitar, where you're going to be using your, the little glass tube to move and get, microtones and use in like tiny little movements there, and move throughout different notes kind of almost infinitely, because of the fact that you're, going past different frets, right? So you're not even like hitting just, straight tones that you would press with your finger. You're getting the things in between. And so he would use this raga guide as a means of finding, little melodies and little things to weave together to, come up with solos and song inspiration and, movements. And then the second thing that he recommended to me was Ali Akbar Khan Volume 2. And because there's a lot of volumes, there's I think 3 or so, but the second one was the one that he absolutely recommended to me to listen to. And that was like beyond like helpful, like in terms of my playing, in terms of my musical exploration, what I listened to, where I was going, what I was able to ask my teacher to bring into my lessons, so that then I could bring that all back to my guitar and my slide, which, I really picked up playing after seeing him with the Allman Brothers Band, and then having that crazy interaction, which I can get into, but I basically, given the whole post, so anybody who's on the group there can see it, but I'll also go into it for those who aren't on the group if you'd like, but because that's a crazy, great story. But, so having received a slide like that, and then, understanding, okay, he's giving me this because he wants me to, learn how to play. He wants me to, get better at my craft and do, the progress of moving on in terms of my, a musical ability of just like, rather than just, scales and chords and things, he wants me to explore. And so I took that as a sign of like, okay, I need to do this too. So, the getting that directly from him, rather than just asking him like, oh, like what was like, this like, I felt like I actually was able to advance my musical ability and my musical knowledge and musical career, while also, like having a personal conversation with him, because the entire time he was fully engaged. It wasn't like just like do this and just do that and like move on to the next person, schmooze. Like we had a very nice, lengthy musical conversation that I will never forget, because it's clearly had an impact on me. But there are I could go on.
Yeah, that is so cool, and I'm sure like the way you're describing it brings Derek just joy to see this like young kid like with this enthusiasm for Indian classical music, for slide guitar, like wanting to talk about music. It's like in some ways you kind of, like you were describing, kill two birds with one stone, in a sense that you were talking to Derek about something that he's interested. You're connecting over this, but you're also getting practical advice. And for the people who are listening, because I'm going to put out an audio version of this, of course, as well. You're in what looks like your studio, and you're wearing the Swamp Family. I guess it's for the new 2023 or whatever membership to the
That's right.
You get a free. Where's mine? I guess mine's probably on the.
Actually, got to pay for it. It's not free. Do? Yeah, you do. But it's all right. It's no problem. If it's going to Derek and Susan, I'll take it. I love it. And they also can take my $40 a year to be on the Swamp Family. I will take it.
No, so looks good. As
it's great, yeah. And here's the thing you don't see is here's the back too. Is you got a Swamp Family on the back.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I see that you got the TTB.
Yep.
The patterns, the tapestry behind you.
Yep.
I'm not even sure what you call that.
It's a blanket, so I use it as a blanket. I'm just hanging it up for the set, but it's basically like a nice a nice like quilt throw blanket. It's very warm.
Looks good, and you got your SG behind you and all that. I don't know if you saw. I didn't notice until last night that this was a thing in the Swamp Family fan club. Is that they're doing, I guess, a fun fan
Q&A.
Yeah, Q&A. Did you submit anything? It made me think of.
Oh, yes, I did.
Did you submit one question to every single member of the band?
Well, no, there's actually the all feature. So I was able to just kind of lump sum everything into there. I didn't really have to send one to Mark, but I did because I just want to say, hey, what's up? Because
that's what I want to do. I was going through my brain. I'm like, what can I actually ask all these people? And two things came to mind. It's like, will you be on the podcast? That's the one thing. And the other thing was, I'm like, I don't even want to ask you a question. I just want to be like, thank you for the music.
Yeah.
Just want to say hi, thank you for the music. I don't even, like, but I did end up asking Susan a question. I asked her what of like her solo era songs or songs that she, wrote, has written for TTB are the most common ones that fans fans tell her that they play. Because I play a little guitar too, not on your level and obviously not on the pros level, but I do love to play like a lot of these Susan Penn songs like La Di Da and Take Me As I Am, and especially When Will I Begin. So I'm curious, like, what are the most popular songs that fans come up to Susan and say, "Oh, I play this song all the time. Thank you for this song." Like, what are the most popular like TTB Susan songs that fans like to play? What did you?
I would have to say probably a lot of people probably ask her about Just Won't Burn. I mean, that's one when she's here in Boston, when she's at the Orpheum, when she's at home turf, that's one of the ones that she plays to like remind people like, this is where I start. Like, this is like Boston's where I started. This is where I was. Like, this is one of the songs that she had. Another one is like, I think Stand Back, but that's more of an Allman Brothers one that was done. But again, she showed up at a lot of these Allman Brothers Band performances as well. Whenever Derek was around, if she was able to tour. So, but I would say, probably Just Won't Burn would be the number one contender for me that people would ask about. More recently, though, I would think that it would be I Can't Make You Love Me, and that's one that makes me really tear up every single time that I hear her and like Gabe start the keys on it. And they've been doing that one pretty recently too, and it just really hits home. I mean, because you listen to the lyrics, it's about someone who's just like having this difficult relationship with wanting to be able to connect with their partner who just doesn't seem to be putting in the same amount of effort. It's title. Like, yeah, I mean, but it's just listening to it though, and like really listening to it. Sometimes like I'll listen to it, I'll listen to the music, I'll listen to Gabe, and then sometimes I'll really listen to the words and I'll be like, wow, this is a really like powerful, like, but sad but impactful song. It has like a huge like heavy weight on it. So I don't know, and the way that she delivers it too is just brilliant.
Yeah, I've talked about that song many times in this podcast, and I always say I'm not crying, you're crying whenever it comes up. And sometimes, like, when I see it on a set list, it's like, okay, I'm not emotionally ready to listen to that when it comes out on archive.org or fan recording or something like that. I'm like, I'm not ready to emotionally go there to I Can't Make You Love Me, but I will eventually, like, of course, listen to every song on every single recording that comes out of this band. Where do we go from here? It's 2021. You just met Derek. I'll kind of let you steer the ship.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I don't know if we can cover everything today.
Well, I mean, so here's the thing: is we can go back a little bit further to let's go to March 16th. So I'll pull that one up here. So we can go to this one. All right. So. With this story, so essentially, it was 2013, March 16th, and I was with my dad, and we were in the car on our way to an Allman Brothers Band concert. It wasn't my first Allman Brothers Band concert, which was March 12th, 2011. So this was about 2 years into my run of going to Allman Brothers Band performances. And we're in the car, and we, I say to my dad that there's this restaurant that I'd found out about from a high school teacher of mine, called Sushi Gary on Columbus Ave. It's right near the Beacon Theater, not too far away. And, we wanted to get, dinner before the show, and which is, like 8:00 show. So we figured like, all right, let's get like dinner at 5, right? So he says, okay, yeah, pull it up on your open table thing. I confirm for 2 at 5. So we get to the restaurant, and we're there, and I look at the screen where we check in, and right under my name is Trucks, Derek. And I freak out, and I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. Wow, Dad, look at that. And the person at the front says, oh, you know him? We're like, you're friends with him? We said, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we know him. So she says, okay, we can seat you right here. We can see you right near them. Yeah. So, we're not that far away. So maybe we're, over here. And if I'm over here, Derek is maybe diagonally across from us, our table. So I'm sitting across from my dad, and I'm able to look over at the table where they're going to sit. Right. And so, but my back is to the door. So my dad is able to see when they come in. So he tells me, they're here. They walked in. So they walk in and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, I like, don't look. He's like, don't look. So I don't look. So I'm like, just sitting, whatever. They come down to the table. Now they have somebody with them who I can't tell. I think he was like a photographer because he had a camera bag and this like hat with a feather in it and like this like leather jacket. And he looked like somebody who was like very like cool, like a PR person, like maybe somebody who was going to do like a photo shoot or like a friend of theirs or something. I don't know, but he was a guest of theirs. So so I knew then it was like, okay, well, like if I'm going to interact with them, I have to be quick. I can't, interrupt their dinner. I have to wait for the right time, make sure that, it's like that it's okay. So we sit there and it turns out that we both are ordering actually the same thing because what this restaurant specializes in is like, omakase, which is like a very specific, order of food and fishes and things. And they serve it to everybody in the restaurant. So we get ours and just a little bit later, Derek and Susan get theirs. And so I look over at them and I'm like very excited because I realize we're eating the same thing. So I'm able to like, look over and subtly see what Derek picks up, what PC picks up, and then I'm able to try the same thing in that order that he tries it. And we actually are both going pretty linearly, but at one point, I pick up a piece and I look over at him and he happens to look up and over at me. We both have the same piece of sushi in our hands. We both eat it at the same time. And the experience is like unbelievable because this fish is like crazy good. And like, we're both experiencing and like, he nods like, this is good. And I nod, yeah, this is good. And then we continue both going back down to our meals and whatnot. Everything finishes. My dad says, okay, so just go step away to the restroom. Go step away. So he sends me away. So I go over to the bathroom, and just like collect myself. And my dad walks over to there. This is now, he tells me this much, much later, right after. He tells me, so he walks over to their table. He says, hi, I apologize to bother you, but my son and I are going to the Allman Brothers Band show tonight. He's a huge fan of yours. Would it be okay if he came over, to introduce himself? And they said, oh, yes, of course. We could tell that he noticed us, when we walked in and he was being cool and collected. Oh, please send him over, of course. So, I walk back up. He texts me, says, okay, come back. So, I come back to the table. He says, okay, you can go. So I walk over there and I say, hi, I'm a really big fan. I'm a guitar player myself. I've been playing since I was 6 and I'm just saying I'm really excited to come to the show tonight. Like it's like, would it be okay? Like if Derek, if you signed my ticket? And he goes, oh yeah, of course. And he takes out his pen, and he, signs my ticket. And I look over at Susan. I say, Susan, would you sign it too? And she goes, oh, heck yeah. And she takes the pen from Derek. She, signs the ticket. And then I say, and I'm a guitar player and I've been playing, since I was 6. And I just want to say you're really good and you've given me a lot of inspiration. And I want to thank you for that. And Derek goes, oh yeah, well here, man. And he pulls his slide out of his pocket, which is the one that is, pictured right here, which we got framed. So he gives me this slide. He says, here, man. And, gives me that. And I said, would it be okay if we took a photo? And they said, of course, here's, and they stand up. We take the photo, which is right there in the frame. And then I say, well, thank you so much. It was like so nice to meet you and really thank you. And yeah, just thank you. And they said, oh yeah, of course. Have a good evening, And we walk off and we walk out of the restaurant and I am floating down the street the entire way to the venue. And by the time that we get to the venue, I've got like a smile the size of Texas on my face, which I saw somebody commented on the on my original Facebook post because it's so funny they say that because I did as well. It was like huge smile and like basically was just so ready for the concert that night. And then by the end of the sets, I was able to rush down, which I always did because we had, balcony seats up at the top and we were able to, have a nice view of the stage and perfect sound right in the center. And then after the show, I would run down the stairs at the Beacon, rush my way through the security guards because I was a kid, just be able to like rush through. There was like, it was much more relaxed at that time. And I'd be able to just run right up to the front. and be able to say like, oh, set list, can I put up a set list? And because I was a seasoned concert goer at this point, so I had known that people at the end of a show go, oh, can I have a set list? But, so I'd seen it. So, like 2011, I saw it, and 2012, I saw it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this myself because this is a really important night. So I grabbed one at the end of the first set and one at the end of the second set. And I then was able to put them up on my wall, and I have this memory. And first of all, it was a great show. So, so Susan came on that night. Colonel Bruce Hampton was there, Nels Klein. I mean, you had Liz Reed, Done Somebody Wrong was the show opener. I mean, like, this was a crazy, insane show. And so to then have all of that taken with me. And a key thing of the Allman Brothers thing, too, is you could get the instant lives. So right after the show, we went out and bought the CD, and I popped that right in the CD drive when we were driving on the way home listening to the show again. And, it was a crazy, crazy experience. But, and then the reason I bring this up is because when I went to a show by myself at the Bank of America Pavilion in Boston, Susan, the moment that I met her, again back there, because Mark had taken me back, she remembered me instantly. She remembered my name. She said, oh my God, hi, Zach from the restaurant. How are you? She remembered me like immediately, and it was amazing. And so we were standing
how
out
long
there.
after that
So after that
Allman Brothers show?
That happened in March. This was that July and August. So
Damn,
it was within the same
a few months later.
Yeah. And it was amazing. And they remembered. She remembered, and this was outside the bus, the old red bus, which they've retired since now. But so this was outside, and at that same time,
great picture of you and Susan.
Oh yeah,
for the audio.
Yeah, and that's great. So that's a picture of me and Sue and Mark, and I got one of me and Sue, just the two of us here.
Great
but
stuff.
Right outside the front, also before we got to the bus, was Kofi. And I had the pleasure and honor of meeting one of the greatest musical geniuses of our time. Twice, actually, was once here and once at the Egg on December 8th, 2015. And that was in Albany, New York, with my girlfriend. We were both at the show together, and she got to meet him too. And I'm so like it's like I feel blessed to have been able to meet him, because he was the kindest, sweetest, most genuine person. And he wanted to make sure that your experience after the show was wonderful. He wanted to be like a liaison. I mean, I remember he would bring some people back sometimes who, had just been, who had walked up, who didn't even have like guest passes and whatnot, he would be like, oh, like I'm already taking my friends back. Like, here, just come, we'll come back. And, and then you would lead out into the area and just be with a bunch of people in like this nice close setting and be able to talk to people. And I know my friend Matt came on here and said that he had an outdoor experience, with certain people backstage. Matt Gervais, he's been on your show before. And he and I are very much like, deep, nerd junkies when it comes to this kind of music stuff.
I can see it.
Yeah,
I know.
And so this backstage experience thing, Kofi just wanted to bring people into it, and it was a beautiful thing, and he was a beautiful soul. And so, I had this story that I posted up about him when I was back at home in New York recently. And I want to tell this is a great story of me walking by the Beacon, where, I was walking by with my girlfriend, and the Beacon was not active right now. It was just the signs were flashing, just saying the Beacon. And I caught this wisp of a wind while I was on, if you know New York, the buildings are tall. So like the wind comes through and rushes through. So I felt the wind, and then I saw the sun come through the clouds, and I was like, that's Kofi. Like, that's absolutely Kofi, like saying hi, because it's right in front of the Beacon. And it was like one of the craziest experiences, because, it was almost like out of a storybook, where like you're like, oh, like, like this could just like you couldn't make this up and whatnot, but it was true. And then I thought, like, this is him, the song Soul Sweet Song, I feel you in the whispering wind.
Yeah, so
I see you in the morning sun, and I just putting those two things together, when I got home, I was like, wow, that really was a nice, like, that was beautiful. And oh man, and so that was great, having that happen.
It's interesting that those lyrics, because I feel like even before that song came out, the those literal feelings of feeling the morning sun and feeling and hearing the whispering wind, literally,
Yeah.
it kind of does make you think of like, I don't know, not to get too new agey, esoteric, spiritual, or whatever, if I'm using those words all correctly. It does kind of make you feel somewhat like it's like those feelings of like a magical connection to a world beyond yours, to something that's bigger than you, something that we don't
Oh yeah.
understand, and a connection to those who we've lost. And it is a great picture with
Yeah.
Kofi right here. And I keep commenting week after week that like, you know, everyone has, not everyone, but many people beyond yourself who are not even as friendly with TTB and the members, like have had all positive experiences, and like Derek
Oh
and
yeah.
Susan and Kofi and everyone is so generous with their time. And I always comment how like I think the first time that I had any personal interaction with Kofi, he was just like the way you're describing, so friendly, so gregarious, asking me if I play guitar, you know,
Yes.
what music am I into, and all. I'm like, why are you asking me all these questions? And
Yes.
and it's I never thought of this.
Well, because he wanted to get to know you, because he cared about you, Adam, because he wanted to make a connection with you, you know, like that's the kind of person Kofi was. He wasn't, you know, just like shooting the shit just to shoot it. He wanted to get to know you on a personal level because he cared, which was amazing about him.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this conversation, and obviously you're a musician, and we could dive into the songs and set lists and even some more of the technical whatever aspects of the music. But just to hear you tell all these stories, like personal stories and personal interactions, I appreciate that as much as because I obviously a lot of my episodes lately have been like just diving into set lists, talking about music and how much we love all the music, which is great and awesome. And I can't wait to get back into that. But this is cool to hear from someone who's had such personal interactions with the band over the year, and I think people out there appreciate that, hearing those stories. We're all a bunch of fanboys.
I mean, absolutely.
And what is it about this? I think we just want to be around this band because they just have, and especially Derek and Susan, like they're you know, they set the tone, and they just have such a positive energy to them, and I think it's just. We just want to be around it, and that goes beyond just like going to shows or listening to the music. Like having these personal interactions and seeing how the band treats all their fans so nicely. Like it just makes like the experience of being a fan that much better and richer and deeper and more meaningful. Like so, I
absolutely.
What do we got here? We got a set list here pulled up from.
I mean, so this set list is from August 6th, so this would be Boston. From that night that the photo was taken. Yeah.
Oh,
with
Susan and Mark and Kofi was that same night. That photo was.
Yep, exactly. And so we went to both shows that night, which spanned over a weekend. So this is the other set list that I'm bringing up now. This is my friend Andre, who I met through the Berklee College of Music program that I was doing at the time when I was in Boston, and we both linked up because we love TTB. He is actually the owner of one of the Dickie Betts SG artist models, and I'm so jealous of him for owning one of those. It's the same model guitar that Derek plays and is currently playing right now. The one that's got, you know, the three holes for where the little plate would be if it was there, and the one that's got the missing top on top of the pickups there on the humbucker. So. If you take a look at that guitar, that's the Dwayne Allman Dickie Betts From One Brother to Another SG that came out as a series around like 2011 or so as an artist run. He has one of those guitars, and I immediately linked up with him. And so we went to the show together, and we got this set list from the July 30th show. And then we also got a slide which Bobby threw down to us. Now, the thing about this, it's really crazy, is the people we believe, the people behind us that night saw this all happen. So we had our set list, we had the slide, we put it underneath, in our little bag that we had for, the merch that we also got. Like we got shirts that night. We put it all in the bag underneath our seats. When the show was over, we went to go get our stuff. We went to go look in the bag. Slide and set list were gone. So that slide that's pictured there, I don't have that slide anymore. So, but
that's a shame.
I've been very fortunate enough to have become very friendly with Bobby over time. Bobby Tees, that's Derek's guitar tech, and he's been on your show before. He and I have connected, and since then, every time he sees me or every time I see Derek, he seems to, just toss me a slide. Yeah, he seems to just toss me a slide.
I know where
Yeah, you do. You do.
You're outside the beacon.
You want to tell the people where that is? Yeah.
I forget the name of the place, but it's one of the restaurants right by the beacon.
Yeah, it's the bar, right across from the back there area. So it's a collection spot, so it's real fun. But also that was at like 1:30 at night, so you really have to stay late after the show. And if you're a New Yorker, you can do that. For people who drive in, I know it's not an easy drive in and out, so you got to go home after the show. But that's a very fun thing to do. So Bobby and I we've met a couple of times, and we also talk over on the Swamp Family app. Actually, I asked him a question about on the app, my handle starts with Hufflepuff, so that's me. But on there, so I ask a bunch of questions, and he was talking to me about the tubes that Derek has in his amp right now, the custom Alessandro speakers that they're using in there, if they still have any DT Weber speakers in the amps, because I'm a real gearhead as well.
I can tell.
So I use that gearhead hashtag very frequently in the app, and so he very quickly responds to those, and it's very cool to be able to talk to him about that through the app as well.
Yeah, him
not
too,
to push the app, but I'm pushing the app, so I will.
Yeah, him too. Super engaging with all the fans, happy to hang out with them, like we're seeing outside the beacon, and answer really any questions. Like people, I see sometimes occasionally tag him as well in the various Facebook fan groups for TTB. Bobby, how did they play XYZ? Is this a new guitar? Like if you ask him anything about tech or gear or instruments, like like that's his thing, or he's super excited to answer or talk about that stuff for sure. So you're barking up the right tree with those conversations.
And the timing on this photo and interaction was perfect as well, because this photo was done October 9th, 2021. So let me, if I have that time correct. Yeah, October 9th, 2021. And so if you know in the timeline history of when this was, I was asking Bobby, so like, hey, what's the band working on right now? Is there going to be any new like live releases, anything coming? He was like, well, Derek and Susan have been in the studio for a pretty long time right now, and they've been working on something. So we've got something pretty big coming pretty soon. That turned out to be I Am the Moon.
Right.
And he told me about this project that they were working on at the Beacon show, but they had been working on it through the pandemic, as we know, through the Fireside live sessions. They had been preceding a couple of these I Am the Moon songs throughout the early venues, like early venue shows and early recordings from home during the pandemic. They were, bringing like seeds of like the early, like building blocks of these songs. I said, hey, we ran this by Doyle, check this out. This is still in the works. We're running this. I don't know. Maybe we're thinking about putting out a new album, but at that moment, though, I knew like, okay, something big is coming, because the smile on Bobby's face when he was talking about it was like miles wide. Like he was excited about it. And it turned out that, this was
2020, 21 Beacon?
2021. This was October 9th, 2021.
Yeah, I was at that show.
Yeah.
6, 8, 9, I think was the final 3 in 2021.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was only able to come down for one because at the time I was working at the University of Connecticut. So I had to pick one show. I had to pick a date, and it was like that was the one that worked. It was a weekend date, and I wanted to make sure to go on a weekend date too, or a Friday date. Those are always but in my opinion, I know the Tuesday, Wednesday shows are, fun. They're pretty great, especially when they span like, over like a week or so, and like you get to see them 4 nights, whatever, like Chicago, right? But those Friday night shows, Saturday night shows, those weekend shows, they really like hit different, because there's just a whole like a weight's been lifted. Like you can just like play into the night and kind of just go for it. And because everybody's got to get to work on Wednesday morning after the Tuesday night show, and you got to get to work on Thursday after, or school. For me, it was school. Like my dad would take me to shows that were in the middle of the week sometimes, but as long as I was able to get up for school to be ready to go on the next day, we could do it again. And I was ready. I was like up. I was ready to go. I popped out and made sure that I was ready so I could prove and be like, no, I can go. I can do this. Let's go.
It's funny. I had a very similar conversation with Falcon that you had with Bobby at outside the Beacon 2021. And he was basically telling me, we're working on what became the I Am the Moon project, and he's like, I think you're going to really love and appreciate what we're going to be putting out soon. He's like, absolutely. I wish I could send it to you. I'm like, yeah, me too. But I kind of didn't, I'm glad that I heard all the music,
Yeah.
mostly in the way that the band wanted to release it.
Exactly. I was
slow
hoping you would
release.
say that.
But yeah,
Yes, the drip.
I was, he was correct that I did definitely love all the
Yeah.
new stuff.
Yeah. The way that they and I talk to whoever I talk to about this band, I bring this up, you know, the way that they released this 4-part LP, this 4-part album of I Am the Moon, in parts 1, 2, 3, 4 with Crescent, Ascension, The Fall, right? So going all the way through these albums and releasing them with, almost about a month or so in between each, while they're also touring and releasing this new material while people are listening to it and watching the YouTube videos go along throughout the summer. First of all, it made it an amazing summer because I was like ready to go. I was like anticipating this stuff. I was like, that made my summer like that. My summer was TTB, and it made me look forward to like, oh, are they going to play any new stuff at the Greek Theater? Are they going to play any new stuff when they stream at Red Rocks? And of course, we got the famous July 29th, performance of Gravity, where Derek does that, almost hovering over 3 octaves of space, going with that, that jarring
they put that out on YouTube.
Stuff.
They put that on.
Oh my
YouTube.
gosh, yes. I mean, that was, there was like so much new innovation in Derek's play style that was coming through the release of this album, and hearing it, and then maybe like a couple of days or the same day getting that concert, because they were released, I think the same day, July 29th was the release of the 3rd one. So just hearing new stuff, and then, hearing the concerts and going and stuff, and then being finally able to hear all that when I was able to go to the Orpheum shows myself. I've gotten a chance to listen to the 50th show at the Beacon and hear some of the new stuff there, but that was over the computer. Hearing it in real life and hearing it at SPAC that summer too, and hearing them play these new tunes and seeing people sing along and being able to sing along was like, it was such an exciting feeling, such a gratifying feeling, I'm sure, for them, because
Derek has mentioned exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
Right now.
Yeah. They seeing fans sing along with new stuff. It's got to be a great feeling.
It's a very unique feeling because it's probably not like super common. Maybe at like a Taylor Swift show, like every single like crazy fan knows every single song and the lyrics like the day after it comes out. But for like, more like rock and blues and the music in these types of genres, it's like you don't get that experience like with bands don't think get that experience where you put out an album, then within a couple of weeks you're playing it live and all the fans know the lyrics to all the songs. And I keep coming back to, like, I love all the songs and how they sound, but I really do love them in a sense, like, unconditionally, and they feel like old songs. I feel like I've known almost all of the I Am the Moon songs, like, these are songs I've been listening to for what, like 10 years now?
Oh yeah, that's what it feels like. Yeah, exactly. That's what it feels like.
There's such a timeless element to all of their music and all of their albums and all of their originals.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I felt that way, because I grew up with the band as a kid, and now to my adulthood as I am at age 26, so I grew up with this music. So when these album releases were coming out and I was able to see them during the summertime or, when I was back at home in New York or when I was in Boston, and I would be able to recognize the new material that they were playing because the album had just come out before. So like with 2013, Made Up Mind, that tour, I remember, some new stuff, new material coming out July 30th and August 6th. And I remember being there and listening to this new stuff, and singing along with Made Up Mind, singing along directly right with Susan, right in front. She looked at me and watched me singing the lyrics, which was crazy, like along with her. And, there was then right after that, August 20th was when they released Let Me Get By, August 20th, 2016. And I remember how my feelings were at that time, where I was with the band. I had seen them just that summer, July 13th at SPAC. So like they were prepping for this new album, and then there's Let Me Get By. And like, I remember new albums being released, digging into them just as heavily as I did with I Am the Moon, learning the lyrics back to front, learning the way that the songs played, learning the the different, like beats, I guess you could call them, because there's the A parts, the B parts, the C parts, that repeat that you hear throughout the song, knowing when they would come in, knowing all the drum fills, knowing all the drops, when everything, hits in line, and then being able to see it live and how they're going to change it and make it slightly different and make something new. It was like a game for me to almost just kind of like, what are they going to do this time? Is Derek going to play Afro Blue? Like, what's going to, what's going to happen? And I got turned on to so much jazz and, like just artists that I might not have found on my own if it had not been for Derek bringing me this new material that, I'm so thankful for, that then, me being the nerd that I am, I had to dig deeper and just see where all that stuff came from. It's just, I could go on hours and hours and hours talking about the music stuff.
And many have, and I have, and can
Yeah.
relate to all the things that you're describing, especially when you talk about like remembering where you were when an album came out, or you first heard a TTB song, or started to first listen to something newer that they had just put out. Because I definitely have those same experiences. Oh, I remember where I was when I first started to listen to Let Me Get By and
Yes.
songs like Hear Me and
Yes.
other things on that album. And even these songs, they're written in a way that, like, I feel like can mean different things to different people at different points in their lives. And they're not they're not generic at all lyrically, but like they're almost like broad enough in a sense and open to interpretation. That's sort of often a Dylan style of writing, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
But even just like a song like Midnight in Harlem has taken on so many personal meanings for me over the year that have sort of evolved over the years. And that just makes, for more of a richer listening experience when you have these emotional connections to the songs over the years. Yeah. And not just like not just one way in which the song resonates. It resonates in a lot of different ways and has a lot of different meaning to us over the years, depending on what's going on in our lives at the time. And that's cool to be along for that aspect of the journey as well.
Yeah, I mean, that also speaks to, though, their growth as a band and how they approach a song, So, for example, I remember an interview when Brandon Boone just came onto the band and he said something about like, oh, so we're going to play a song. So which version, because there's so many different iterations of all of these same songs that have been in the catalog for a while. Bound for Glory, Midnight in Harlem, Made Up Mind, Part of Me. These songs have been in the rotation for quite some time. And there's a lot of songs that were in the rotation that haven't come back in a while that now are coming back. Like Joyful Noise has been away from the rotation for a while and is now back. One that I haven't seen in a long time is Wah Wah, and I'd really like to see that again because that was my Beatles connection that brought that in there. But and I've Got a Feeling they did recently again, which was fantastic, which was an older song that I remember from when they were with the Black Crowes tour. So, I mean, they've developed all of these, same songs, and have grown and evolved in such a way. For example, one that sticks out to me is Part of Me, where I don't know if you hear it now, but at the very front of every time they play it now, he plays that little lick that goes right up the road, ba da da da, which is right off of I Am the Moon. It's like a brand new little lick that came from another song, and then he incorporates that into the introduction of Part of Me. And it's amazing because he's linking, their roots to their new stuff back and forth, weaving in old out. And the way that he approaches the old songs with Made Up Mind, he solos like he's playing them as if they belong on I Am the Moon. Because his guitar style has evolved in such a way that the way that he approaches solos now, his Made Up Mind solo now versus if you listen to his Made Up Mind solo, even from 2017, it's a whole different vibe because his play style was at a different point in his evolution. So, and from what he was listening to, what he was feeling at the time, what the band was going through, what the world was going through. So, I mean, it's kind of just, it's crazy how time and, situation can influence the way that you play, the emotion and the feeling that you have, and the way that it can be conveyed. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like,
totally.
It's really a crazy way to see the evolution of these songs and how they play them in such a new way, but also it's still the same song.
And I think something that separates maybe this band in terms of what you're describing from other bands or artists is that somehow they get better. Like you'll bands will play the same songs over and over again on the road, and you'll be like, the singer's voice is not what it used to. They do this phrase differently. This guitar solo's different. Something's a little bit different. It's not the same. Maybe it's even not as good in some regards. But everything like Tedeschi Trucks Band does, it just gets better and better. And people who go to a show, they'll say, that was the best show I ever went to. People have gone to 20, 30, 40, 50 shows. Last night was the best one ever. Like, the band keeps getting better. People keep saying these things, and it's just like it's amazing. Like,
what I hear from other people too,
get better somehow.
Yeah. What I hear from other people too is that they think that the show that they went to was the best show that happened. And by the way, it is, because for you, that experience was the best experience you ever had up to that moment in your life.
Yeah, I was going to say the latest show is the best show. And in terms of like, because people say, I hope that they play this tonight. I hope they play that tonight. And kind of what I've come around to, the way I describe it or think of it is like, I want them to play all the things that they haven't played in a while. That's what's going to hit me the hardest. That's what I want to hear the most. Play all the things that you not that I'm going to be happy and satisfied and have an amazing experience no matter what they play. And I don't even care what they play. They could pick the songs out of a hat. But in terms of like, what songs do I want to hear? I'll play that thing you haven't played in like 3 years. Play all the,
Well, I can tell you this. My idea and approach to what I'm going to expect when I go to a Tedeschi Trucks Band show has changed from the moment that I saw this photo that the band put up on social media, which was this catalog of this huge list of songs that the band knows and has in their repertoire of things that have been circled, crossed out, underlined, bolded. And I realized, okay, so Derek has a whole methodology that he goes through when meticulously selecting and picking a set list for that night. And he has a way that he and the band, they probably talk things out of what's working for the band right now, what's not, what they've been practicing, what's in the rotation, what's not in the rotation, how many times things have been played, how many times they've played things at a certain area and what they need to bring back.
It's insane how much research goes into that. And I feel like we're almost like describing working backwards. We look at a set list and then we're like, okay, so let's try to figure out what is the method to this madness, whether it's like, this is the traditional blues song. They're doing The Sky Is Crying tonight, so that's going to be that song, or they're going to do more of the Key to the Highway or something more of a traditional blues song, or this is going to be the Eye and the Moose song. This is going to be the old song. Even on like I think it was the 50th Beacon show, they started the show with
two songs and then Crescent. So I actually have it.
Didn't they play one song from each of the first 4 albums? I don't know.
So let me pull it up.
They did that one.
Let me pull it because I have it. So it was. So that night they started the show with "Don't Let Me Slide," "All That I Need," "Laugh About It," "Signs, High Times," and then went straight into the entire crescent of "Here, My Dear," "Fall In," "I Am the Moon," "Circle Around the Sun," "Passaquan," and then came out with out of that into Turtle Blues with Yorma and Jack, "Don't Think Twice, It's All Right" as well with Yorma and Jack, and then just did "Made Up Mind," "Keep On Growing," "The Storm," "Whipping Post," and that was the end of set 1.
Straight fire. Where do we go from here? I don't want to take up too much of your time.
I actually cleared out my whole Saturday for this, but we could end it here if you want. We could keep going. I could come on as a guest and keep bringing more stories that I have.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely have to have you back on at some point and definitely to recap a show. What others? I see a bunch of other photos. I don't know if we get to everything, but what else jumps out at you from? I mean, I guess the last.
Well, the last point I was going to make, though, about the set list thing is, so my expectations going into shows has been, I'm going to let the band and Derek play what they want to play for me tonight, or for us, the audience, what they're thinking that, say I'm at the Orpheum. What does the Orpheum need tonight? Here's the set list they've curated, and I'm going to take it as it is, and I'm going to be as happy as a clam because each song that they play, regardless of what it is a killer, and they come through every time. So so for example, Sign of the Times, right? I wasn't a big Harry Styles fan. My sister is a huge Harry Styles fan. My girlfriend loves all that stuff. I hadn't really listened to it. Susan comes out with this, and I'm like, wow. This is a great cover. Who is this? Oh, it says Harry Styles. Oh, I know this song. Okay, because you wouldn't figure this about me, but I'm not into like mainstream popular music that, I was supposed to be growing up with as a kid on the radio.
Yeah,
so I was
like
listening
me.
to all this. Right. So I don't really listen to Harry Styles, but when she did it, I was like, wow, so if Susan appreciates this must be a very good song. And I listened to it, and honestly, it really is a very musically, very technically good song. And, the lyrics are nice. It's a good message. It's sweet. It's concise. It's good playing. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to let Derek and Susan introduce me to whatever they want to teach me, because it's basically class. I'm going to class. I'm learning from my professors. I'm letting them teach me. And I'm going to go to school and then be able to play, like a good little student, because, I'm so this band blows me away every time, and I feel like I'm learning something new with every experience I go to.
100% the same way. And even going back to what you mentioned before about how many new or musicians or songs or artists bands you haven't heard of or known, or songs you don't know, they educate fans and they expose fans and introduce fans to new music and different music, and expand our ears, even getting more into, like you're saying, some of the Indian classical music or the jazz influences, and some of these other maybe more obscure things to the average
right.
Jam band, classic rock fan, or blues fan. Even like it's that's a big part of what sustains me with this band is they have so many of their own originals, but they cover so many songs and great songs and introduce you to new music. And of course they have 12 members who bring their own styles and influence to the band.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I feel like it's an endless like amount of content and conversation that I could have on this podcast. And when I tell people I do a podcast about a band, they're like, "You do a podcast just about one band? What do you talk about the whole time? What do you talk about?" I'm like, I can't keep up with the band. The band is playing Xerox and releasing an album on the same night, and I'm supposed to I know, but I want to recap all this and talk about all the stuff. It's like,
right.
I can't keep up with their dates and their releases and all the content that they put out in terms of commenting on it and sharing it. Like, it's hard for me to keep up with what they do. So it's like, there's no there's no thought that what am I going to talk about, other than when maybe they were doing no shows in 2020 and less in 2020. But even then, that
was an interesting period too. Yeah, that was an interesting period too, because during the Swamp Family phase, they had just pretty much started doing the Swamp Family online stuff and releasing things. And then pandemic hit, so we were kind of at a dry period of releases for a little bit. And then they started dropping these things on SoundCloud of full performances, going way back in their catalog, which was separate from the Swamp Family, official Nugs releases. These were ones that you could listen to for a little bit, and then they would come down. And I think they did that about 17 or 19 times. It was part of
I didn't even realize that. I'm SoundCloud page now.
Yeah, no, it's private. You can't find it. Because they were privately hidden links, so they're not on the public-facing page. So, for example, they released a version of the October 11th, 2017 Beacon performance through that as a streaming platform. And so when you were in the, at the time, they would go on the discussion board, and there was a person, I think Mark Love was the person who was putting these things out and running the program there. He would say, hey, here's volume 4 of, the Swamp SoundCloud releases. And, and then they would, the next week or 2 weeks or whatever, they would leave them up for a little bit. Then they would come down. You could never find them again. And then they'd put a new show on there. And it was kind of like this, streaming kind of to fill the void while it was during the pandemic.
Yeah,
and then
I'm on their SoundCloud now. They have a bunch of stuff on their SoundCloud page now.
They do.
Some of it might be subscription or paid, but it looks like the I Am the Moon stuff is on there, it looks like.
Right. So you'll find official album releases there, but you won't find full live album, full live concert recordings. So, but this was a thing that they were doing to fill the void for people during the Swamp Family, in addition to the Swamp Family TV on YouTube. So they were releasing some old concerts and performances there as well. Right. So even though we weren't getting new material, it was actually nice because we were able to get a lot of access to soundboard recordings, which I am a huge junkie, nerd geek for soundboard recordings of the band, because I'm a very audio heavy junkie. So if I can get a nice crisp recording, this new Europe thing was like chef's kiss for me, because
I know it's funny because like you're more you're in like many fans, and like my dad, it makes me think of like really appreciate high quality audio and want to seek it out and desire to get the highest quality you can. Whereas me, I'm just like, a fan recorded, I'll listen to anything. Like, if it's there, I'll listen to it. But then when I heard these Europe recordings, and something about Passaquan really jumped out at me.
I know, recording, right?
Just because I've listened to like every single version of Passaquan that's on our I have listened to every single version of that song. I know all their songs pretty much.
Yes.
But like to hear a soundboard high quality recording of Passaquan,
I know,
versus a fan recorded version is just like totally. And there's been a few. I think obviously they've streamed a few shows and they play Passaquan live at shows, and there's been like pro shot footage and pro audio. But something about like just listening to it, and not even watching, but just listening to such high quality audio versus the fan recordings. No disrespect to the tapers, I appreciate all them.
Oh my gosh! By the way, Ed and Bob do a phenomenal job. Yeah, Ed G. So Ed Tyre on Archive, and Bob
Alex
Hub.
Leary. There's a few.
Oh my God, Alex Leary. Yeah, he's great too. They all get extremely wonderful, high quality recordings and do a great job. And my gosh, to them, like I say, thank you, because sometimes we couldn't get stuff from Europe. There was no, streams from Europe. There was nothing. So I was relying on those archivists out there.
Dude, I love it all. I mean, I got right now on my web browser, I have the Tedeschi Trucks fans group, family and friends, the fan club, Susan fan page, and an alternate Tedeschi Trucks fan group. I have them all bookmarked. And they're all set when I click on it. New posts first. So every time I click on the page, I see everything new in order.
Same.
And I could see people who go to shows. I see their photos. I see their videos. I see set lists. I see the personal photos with band members. Like, and I just eat up this content. Honestly, at this point, like, I'm on Instagram and Twitter also, but like Facebook is pretty much what I use like for today.
That's what I was saying to my girlfriend. Yes.
Other than like maybe like private messaging and
really
organizing contacts. Like in terms of my engagement, interaction, and on Facebook, it is pretty much all Tedeschi Trucks at this point. Basically.
Yes, that is what I use Facebook for exclusively, is Tedeschi Trucks now, because it's the place to connect with people. It's how I met you, actually. It's how I met Matthew Gervais, who's been on your show before. It's how I met some of the admins for the Tedeschi Trucks Band page. They've got like 49,000 people or something like that in there now at this point. The band interacts with that one. They heavily post in there sometimes. So, I mean, that's the place to be. TTB is to talk about with people in there. So it's really important to have, nice discussions in there about, what the band is doing, how they're performing, like in-depth discussions. I would love to see more people talking about what we talk about here on the podcast about, like deep analysis of musical performances and deep analysis of like what this song, plays out technique wise and where it comes from inspirationally and who we think this lick could have come from. And, I heard this on an album, Chet Baker, this could be this, that, I'd love to see more people talking about that. I know I'm such a nerd, but I mean, not to say what Bobby has said before as well, because Bobby Teese has made a post about this many years ago. It was just like, you come to the show, and Susan has said this as well. You come to the show, you know where you're sitting, you know what's going on, and just at the end of the day, be courteous and respectful to those around you. Everybody wants to have a good time at the show. If you're going to dance, you're going to dance. If you want to, stand, you can stand in the very back row, in the balcony, which is where I sat as a kid all the time. I loved sitting in the balcony, but I also loved standing. I was a stander, so I would go down to the, to the front area at where all the seats are at the GA and whatever. And if you wanted to have a standing experience, you stand there. If you want to have a sitting experience, you go up and, but you don't block anybody. If you're up in the areas, you don't block because there's people behind you. You be courteous. You think about all these things, but, I'm tired of seeing the same discussions over because it's about the band. It's about the music. It's about being positive, loving one another, bringing each other into Tedeschi Trucks Band, bringing new people in, keeping around old people who have been with the band for a while. Just like, just engaging with a community who we all know at the end of the day loves this band, loves this music, connects with this music, feels something personal about this music. And, it's the one thing that ties us and binds us and weaves us together in terms of that online space. And, if we all do what we do on the podcast here, which is like talk about the band and what it means to us and how much it means and, like where our influences are and where we're going. And I think it would be like a really nice thing to just see people engaged in that way. And you could say that about anything too, is just, putting personal differences aside to be able to just, make it all about the things that we love and the things that we share and that make us happy.
That is so well said and appreciated. And I'm on the same page with all that. And I'm finding that experience myself, just talking to different fans and people who have different connections with Derek and Susan and the band over the years. I've talked to people who have seen Derek perform when he was 10 years old in the South.
Yeah.
And I've talked to people who discovered TTB in 2018 or more recent and had no idea who Derek and Susan were. And yet these people share such a similar amount of passion for the music and for the band.
Oh, yes.
And that's just infectious, and I just want to be around it. And I do enjoy talking to newer fans too, because it's almost like you're kind of living vicariously through them. Like, because it's like I keep coming back to like watching like Breaking Bad or like one of these great TV series with someone who's never seen the show, and you can rewatch it with them and like. To be at I love hearing when people go to a TTB show and they bring a first timer with them.
Oh
and
my
you
gosh,
kind of get the recap of what the first timer's reaction, because like everyone always has such an amazing time. But the
especially if it's a kid with their parent going. Oh my God, you love to see that reaction, because I almost want to watch that kid more than the band and see how that kid is responding, because like that reminds me of me, seeing the band too. And like, so when new kids come and new fans with their parents, I mean, it's such a great thing to see.
I want to ask one more. When you were growing up, and obviously you were getting into your dad's music and playing guitar and maybe even other. I want to ask you, do you sing at all? I do, but I've since actually kind of pulled back from that. I haven't done that as much because I kind of wanted to focus more on the guitar playing. And I guess I kind of, pulled a feather out of the same hat as Derek. I was kind of just like pulling myself back a little bit, focusing more on the guitar. But I do sing, and I would sing if I was able to, get up the will to actually go back and try and do like open mics and stuff, but I got very shy out of doing that in college because I couldn't really find anybody to play with other than myself. And so it was difficult for me to do slide solos and play with things when I was also trying to carry the entire song myself, and Skidmore was great for that because we had, this Falstaffs area where you could, Friday nights and stuff, do open mics. But I mainly, try to just do my own thing, carry my own songs, but I couldn't play slide and do like Tedeschi Trucks stuff like I wanted because I had to continue strumming and things. I didn't have anybody to play with. But, that's not to say that I would still not love to sing. I mean, I would always love to be able to sing and play with people and find a group to play with. And, anybody out there who likes drumming and who's in the Massachusetts area who likes playing this kind of music, hit me up, because I've got my rig. I've got things to play. I've got fingers that are ready to go, ideas that are ready to come out. So when you were growing up, well, I'm going backwards now, but when you were
go ahead.
You started to get a guitar. Did your peers and friends and people around your age, did they think you were like weird, or how did your peers react to you like falling in love with your dad's music? Because I can kind of relate to that. Like I always say that I rebelled by liking the music my parents like. That's how I rebelled.
Exactly.
In some regard.
I mean,
what was the reaction of your peers to your musical tastes and interests and
certainly when people. Certainly when I told people like, oh, I listened to Buddy Holly, they're like, who the heck is that?
Right.
Or like I listened to, Elmore James. I listened to, like the Three Kings. Do you know who the Three Kings are? They'd be like, of
course.
Who are you?
Oh,
no, I'm asking you. I'd be asking people, I'd be like, do you know who the Three Kings are? And they'd be like, who are you? Like, what are you talking about? I'd be like, oh, you don't know Albert, Eddie, and Freddie? Like, you don't know these? Like, you don't know BB? Oh my gosh. And and I would just be like this weird kid, like bringing out like weird music knowledge. I'd be like, oh, that's weird. Like, what? How do you not know who Eminem is? Like, how do you not know who Chance the Rapper is? How do you not? I'd be like, oh, I don't know, because I was like dealing about Warren and thinking about Derek and thinking about like Jimmy Herring and Buddy Guy, whatnot, right? So like I was not in that same space, but people. When I was growing up and I was playing, and I was playing guitar and stuff, and it was definitely embraced by the people around me. My family embraced that. My friends embraced that. They encouraged me to go up and do little talent shows, coffee houses, just like little gigs, things here in high school. But, I had a lot of support from my dad and from my mom and my sister, my two best friends, Jacob and Jonah, who have been there by my side forever. And, they were my number one supporters for music. And I remember being in the talent show as a young kid in like middle school and doing Johnny Be Good with just me and my Strat, my Fender Strat, which was my first like real electric guitar. And I was up there doing it, the whole thing, whatever. And everybody was like, woo, at the end. And it was great. And I was like, okay, so like I could actually like do something with this. This is fun. Like it doesn't just have to be in my room, like, listening to like old, music that only I know about, and this is in my head. Of course, everybody knows about this music. That's not me. But, there are countless other people on the internet who know about this music. So I can't be the only one discovering it, right? It's not like I found it. But so me finding it and being like, oh, I'm the only one that's my age that I think knows this. It's cool. And being able to play it at the talent show and being like, oh, like you guys, this is not just a song from Back to the Future, like this is a real like Chuck Berry song. This is a real song. And having people engage with that was fun. And then, being able to, I guess, find my own way musically through the music that my dad gave me, I was able to, just kind of build this repertoire of knowledge and like love and passion for this, authentic, organic, analog, instrument-based music. And that's not to say, so my background is in physics, and I have a real deep appreciation for people who create digital music, like EDM music, and they take the time to go in and, create samples and deal with envelope filters and timing. And I mean, you have to have a real knowledge of precision and beat structure and musical theory to be able to create some of these tracks, as much as people like to think it's, you press a button, one and done. So it does take something to do that. But sonically, for me, my ears it was really never appealing to me. So I never dipped into the EDM scene. I never dipped into rap and stuff. But I've been told by people that Chance the Rapper uses authentic, organic, like real instruments with a horn section and everything. And I've been told I should listen to that. And I'll give it a try, but it's not my cup of tea necessarily. But I mean, again, I can appreciate good music being made, good music being created by artists who are, expressing themselves in a way that they find, works for them. Same as the way that Mike Madison and Derek Trucks and Susan and Gabe write these songs and expressions of themselves in I Am the Moon, so it's like everybody comes to this in their own way. But I'm not going to say that I hate a piece of music. That's not something in my wheelhouse of, like Derek or the Grateful Dead or something like that. Because, to say that you hate something simply because sonically it doesn't sound good to you is like, it's closed-minded. It's like, it's not something that I want to hold, of a thought. You know what I mean?
I do kind of know what you mean, but I think there is something to be said. Like if we're attracted to certain people or certain music or certain things, there is something to be said for being unattracted to other things.
That's true.
Well.
That's true.
I think there are certain types of music that I'm like, that's not really for me. That's too
not for you,
there.
Right?
That's true. It's maybe that not for me. That doesn't mean it doesn't have merit, but sometimes certain sounds and certain things, just like the way our brain processes it, just kind of can be grating. GRAT.
That's true. That's true.
For whatever reason. But anyway, on that note,
but what's funny?
Go on.
What's funny is that from physics perspective, though, sometimes that's the point. It's so for example, if you play somebody dissonance, you're doing a purposeful, intentional playing of notes that are slightly in pitch together to give off this jarring sound. Now, in some contexts, that can be awful, right? In others, you and I actually enjoy it, and when we enjoy dissonance is when Derek does it with his slide, when he plays notes that are slightly out of tune. And he gets all of these, microtones. So there's different applications of the things that you and I don't like or that you and I like. And it's a matter of, context of when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, what the intention is, and who it's coming from.
Exactly. When the band is jamming and Kebby is doing some
avant-garde
stuff.
Coltrane, yes.
Yeah. Without adhering in TTB context, it might not be appreciated on the same level. Whereas when TTB is doing some sort of experimentation or more avant-garde sounds or jazzier sounds, you're hearing them in the context of a show, a song, an evening, whatever the case may be, and it's like all part of the journey and part of the narrative that with the peaks and the valleys and gives a different emotional feel to a moment within a show. Anything else you want to mention or cover or talk about, or I'll give you the opportunity to plug or promote whatever you want to plug and promote also.
Yeah, well, I guess before I plug and promote, the last thing, because we're talking about jazz, is this is an unbelievable venue. It was originally CBGB. You can pull up the screen now because I have it up there. But so this was a very, very small show that Tedeschi Trucks Band did in on January 31st, 2014, and this was at the John Varvatos building, like in the Bowery in New
Yeah, I
York
remember
City.
it. I wasn't there, but I remember it. And I remember
Yeah.
Mind that I think they released a video.
Yes,
of that.
they released a couple songs.
Yeah. I remember all this stuff. Crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy what you remember, but so my
Right.
mom was able to get us like these crazy insider tickets. Somehow she knew a connection or something, and I ran right up to the front because there were no seats, so you had to basically rush into the venue. So we tried to get there in time to where we were right at the front of the line as they were letting people in, and I rushed myself up, and I was right up along the gate for this performance. And again, this is where I heard some of these songs that had just been recently put out, or were like, kind of like in the rotation, but were just being done over and over again. And it was a smaller version of the band. It must have been an amazing experience for Derek and Susan to, come into a venue that was heavily known as as a punk venue that had hosted a huge number of acts and artists. And then, to be able to play in such a famous venue like this and bring their own spin to it. What was cool about it is John Varvatos had dressed them up in a whole bunch of leather that night. So there was like a whole bunch of like black leather. And I had never seen Derek wear a black leather jacket like that. And Susan looked super cool. And it was a smaller version of the band. And after the show, I linked up with Mark Rivers, and that's where he and I budded our friendship, because he had recognized my face from the shows that I'd been to at the Beacon and stuff. And so he recognized me, and then remembered me from meeting me at Bank of America Pavilion. And so then after that, I linked up with him, and he and I have been friends ever since, and we correspond. Off season, I text him, wish him happy holidays, ask how he's doing. He and I are basically, we're really, really good friends, and I know him outside of the context of TTB, and he's been really somebody who, he comes to me and he says it's amazing to see how you've grown and this and other things. Like, so he's watched me, age into this musician, music lover, music appreciator, music nerd that I am. And I remember just this show specifically because that was the night that I met Mark, on a one-on-one scale, and like really had a conversation with him. And it was really something special.
That's so cool. And I feel like you are not the only person out there. I mean, not that there's a million people out there, but like kids and young people who've grown up with this band who've like developed a relationship with various members of the band because like,
oh yeah,
they're just so friendly to everyone and so nice to everyone.
They are.
So and I will talk to all these people on the show, hopefully the band members, and also like all these fans like yourself who have had these personal interactions with the band over the years. Where can people find and follow you?
So basically, I do a radio show every Tuesday night on WBRS, which is Brandeis Radio. Brandeis University allows me to use their studio for 3 hours, for like a nice 2 hours. And so I do it used to be called Grateful Dead and Friends, spelled PH, like, fish. But I've since changed the title at my dad's suggestion very, very smartly, because I've been playing a lot of TTB lately. So I now call the show Grateful Trucks and Friends. So it's Grateful Trucks and Friends, spelled PH, WBRS 100.1. And I usually share the link on my Facebook. It's just my name, Zac Transport. You can catch me on Twitter too. So I think it's Hufflepuff420. And I just thought that was like a funny pun, like Hufflepuff and then Puff Puff. But, I know it's like a stupid, childish, kiddish thing, but, it's funny. It's the culture. It's whatever. But, anyway, so you can catch me there. And, so I'll sometimes tweet out things there. I have a YouTube channel too with some of my old performances. If you want to go and check it out, you can just type in like Zac Transport on YouTube.
I got to go down the Zac Transport.
It'll come up. And so you'll see me, like I've played sometimes at Fat Cats. I was down there in New Orleans with my mom. We went on a mom-son trip, and I happened to ask the bartender if she had like a little shot glass, and I went up and I told the local band, I was like, hey, I play guitar. I have the thing. Can I come on? And they were like, yeah. So I did a couple songs there. My mom recorded it, filmed it. It's on YouTube. And so that was there. And I have some recordings of myself, like doing, some performances in high school and at college, and so you can catch me there. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have a show or like a program to plug other than my radio show. I work at Wellesley College, so I'm always in the Massachusetts area in Natick. So if anybody wants to jam, I'm always willing to jam with people who are like-minded people. I'm sure that this podcast is a way to get people to reach out to me and contact me who are like-minded musicians who want to play this kind of music, who are in the area. I'd be more than happy to do that, because I'm always looking to play. And I guess that would be the really only thing I have to plug, other than just, keep practicing, because that's the way to do it right, as Phil said. Yeah, I wanted to say, Adam, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It was a real pleasure to be on here, and I really appreciate you giving a platform to like-minded fans like myself to come and talk about our love for the band and our feelings for the band. And you're doing a great job with, keeping up with the band and keeping all these fans fans informed and posted on everything TTB and everything they're doing. And as much as you call yourself the unofficial podcast, I definitely think of you as the official podcast of the band that I go to for news, for thoughts, insights, and stuff. And so I want to thank you for creating this platform and bringing me on here. And I always look forward to coming back and talking more TTB with you. So really, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Oh, of course. Thank you. I appreciate all that. That means a lot to me, for sure. I love hearing all that stuff. We'll definitely get you back on again soon. Definitely to recap the garden party show. The Boston
yes,
one
absolutely.
You're going to.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe before then, if you go to end up at another show, I feel like we had a lot to cover. I see a lot of other pictures and set lists and anecdotes, anecdotal things that we can talk about at a future date for sure. Maybe we'll get you on with another guitar player. I'll get a whole panel.
Yeah.
All kinds of interesting ideas. Reach out anytime. Again, thank you, and let's talk soon.
Yeah, sounds great. I'd love to come on with Matt, because I feel like he and I would bounce off each other real well.
Oh, yeah, you got a couple of real deep music nerds get into it.
Yeah,
I'll just sit back
for
and
sure.
let you guys steer the ship. but thank you again, and let's talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds great, Adam.
You got it. Later. Peace. So there you go. My episode with Zac Transport. That was so much fun. Can't wait to get Zac on again soon. That young man is a great music fan and is an especially dedicated TTB fan, which of course I appreciate. Anyway, hope everyone is doing okay out there. Please check out at Tedeschi Trucks Podcast on Instagram. Please be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, all that. I'm at Adam Choit on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to follow me, adamchoit.com for all my personal stuff. Tedeschi Trucks Podcast.com for all things related to the show. Tedeschi Trucks Band's official website is Tedeschi Trucks Band.com. That's Tedeschi Trucks Band.com. Definitely check that out. Buy tickets to shows, buy the merch, join the Swamp Family Fan Club, download the app. Lots of good stuff on there. Thank you to the band. Thank you to the crew. I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate everyone listening and for all the support. Let's talk soon. Later.